Okay, you are going to be starting a stocking project. So this is an example of what your stocking could possibly look like. And you are using the pattern that you have been given. So you are welcome to just follow these instructions. I'm just going to do a little bit of the video part just to kind of give you a visual on how this is going to go. So you will be given 2 pieces of felt fabric, and you can cut out your pattern first, or if you want to save a little bit of time, you can place your pattern on top of the felt, and then you're going to pin it. But either way, you're still going to be pinning. So we're going to pin on the inside because we will be cutting around on the out edges. When you pin it, you've got to go through all 3 layers. So you've got to go through the paper, and then the first layer of felt, and the last layer of felt. So as you can see, my pin is through all 3 layers. So we're going to pin it. Okay, I've pinned all the way around on the inside edges, and I pinned this part too. This is going to be the strap for the stocking. And then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut around the outside edges. Being very careful not to poke myself in the process. Okay, I've cut all my pieces and I'm going to take the pins out, put them back into my pin cushion. And I'll have 2 equal pieces with which I can do my designs on. So there's that side, and there's this one. And then same thing with my strap. If you notice, this says cut 1, so I only need 1 strap. That's this piece here. This said cut 2 pieces because I've got to have my front and my back. Now, any kind of applique designs, when I say applique, I'm talking about cutouts like this. I'm going to cut on a separate sheet of felt, and then I'm going to use whatever type of stitch I want to stitch that on. But if you'll notice, I only stitched it onto one side. I don't want to put my 2 pieces together and sew them together and then decide I want to put a picture on it, because if I stitch that into both layers, guess what? It's going to get stuck to the back, and we're not going to be able to put things on the inside of our stocking. Okay, one of the things I think I might want to add is I want to add a little part here at the toe of the stocking and a little part here at the heel of the stocking. So what I've done is I've just taken my white fabric and I've put it there. I've cut around to make it look like what I think it should, the shape that I think it should be, and then I'm going to pin it. And the reason why I'm pinning it is because when I stitch it on, I don't want that moving around. So I'm going to be stitching right around the edges here. And when it's done, it'll look something like this. Now, if I wanted to make this a little more of a finished edge, I'd probably do some stitches right here. But this kind of makes it look like a nice traditional stocking, like it's old-timey, and maybe that's the look that I'm going for. Now, around here, I've got another piece at the top. You don't have to do this, but you can. This just adds a little more design to it that I can pin here, and then I would be stitching around the top. So I've used a running stitch here. There's a blanket stitch around these edges, and that kind of just makes everything look like nice and secure. And remember, I've done the stitching here on top of the fabric before I stitch these 2 pieces together. Okay, here's the back side. Nice and neat. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention with this is that since we're going to be stitching some fabric that's a little bit thicker than what we've used in the past, we're going to be using some thicker string. So we're not using thread like we did before when we were practicing. We're not using anything this thin. There's a difference. We're going to use something that's thicker. So we're going to use this string. And we're also going to be using a bigger needle. So we're using a craft needle because our smaller needles will not be able to fit that thick string in it. So we're using something that's bigger. And we're going to put it in just like we did before, coming through the eye of the needle. Okay, I have threaded my needle. Now the difference between what we did before also, before we had taken our 2 ends and we tied them together, so they didn't come undone. But this time, since our string is so thick, we're just going to tie a knot at one end so it doesn't come out when we start stitching, and we're going to leave the other end loose. And this is going to make it a lot easier for us because it's not going to be getting twisted and tangled up on itself. But also when we come to a stopping place, because we're not going to be able to get it all done in one day, we can just take our needle out and leave the thread still inside here. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say I'm going to start up here. So let's say I've gone a couple of stitches. Because I'm doing this first since I'm sewing it on. I'm going to use a running stitch. Sewing it onto my top piece of fabric before I sew the front and the back together. And following the directions on it. And let's say it was the end of the class period and I was not able to finish. So once I stop, I'm just going to take my needle out and I'm going to leave my string there. And tomorrow I can pick up back where I left off. So I've still got my string, got my needle, and then I'm just going to rethread it and keep pulling where I left off. Okay?